Arkansas Historic Preservation Program. Thank you all for braving the wet weather and joining us today for Sandwiching in History at the U.S. Post Office and Courthouse. I'd like to thank the U.S. Bankruptcy Court for allowing us to tour this beautiful building today. And in particular, I want to thank Charlotte Gomlicker. Charlotte, are you upstairs? Charlotte? She was upstairs. Charlotte Gomlicker, Phil Principe, and Jean Ross with the Bankruptcy Court for all their help today. And the Bankruptcy Court was kind enough to allow cameras and your cell phones in here. And usually you're not allowed to bring any of those in the building. So you're allowed to take photographs while you're in here, but they ask that you do not take any panoramic shots of the entire courtroom. There are 3 courtrooms in the building, so don't take panoramic shots showing all the exits in any of those 3 courtrooms, please. And that's for security purposes. And if you brought your lunch, did anybody bring their lunch? I don't see anybody with the lunch. I was going to tell you where you could eat it, but it's okay. This tour is worth 1 hour of HSW continuing education credit through the American Institute of Architects. If you're interested in that, you can see me after the tour. I know Nancy is interested. I've got you, Nancy. Little Rock's Old Post Office and Courthouse, also known as the Old Post Office and Customs House and the Old Federal Building, was completed in 1881. Additions to the original building were constructed in 1897, 1908 to 1910, and in 1997. It was listed in the National Register of Historic Places in 1973 for its Renaissance Revival style architecture. Now, there's some interesting history about this block of the original city of Little Rock. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that, and then we'll talk about the construction of this building. By the early 1840s, Roswell Beebe owned Block 98 of the original city of Little Rock, which is this block, bounded by 2nd, Markham Center, and Spring Streets. During the early to mid-19th century, Beebe was one of the most important businessmen in Little Rock. At one time, he held clear title to nearly 240 acres of land in what is now downtown Little Rock. Although he served as Little Rock alderman in the late 1840s, his primary interest was in land speculation and the construction of a railroad line from Cairo, Illinois to Fulton, Arkansas. In 1853, he organized and became president of the Cairo and Fulton Railroad, which later became part of the St. Louis, Iron Mountain, and Southern Line, and then later on, better known to y'all as the Missouri Pacific, and now Union Pacific today. The town of Beebe in White County, Arkansas, located along that railway line, was named in his honor. So anyway, that's who Roswell Beebe was. The Antebellum Bb Mansion, a 2-story Greek Revival style house, was located on the north side of Block 98 of this block at the southwest corner of Markham and Center Streets, and it faced north toward Markham right across the street from the old State House. The Beebe house was valued at $15,000 on August 7, 1865, the same day that it burned to the ground. The Beebe's 2-story brick kitchen, their covered well, and then another wood structure of unknown origin survived on the block until the late 19th century. They were located a little bit more towards this building. In 1872, attorney Mason W. Benjamin, come on in y'all, constructed the 3-story Italianate-style Benjamin block on the site of the former Bb Mansion. The Benjamin block, also known as the Alice block, was demolished in 1956, and that's now a parking garage just to the northeast of this building. So that was all on the north side of the block. There wasn't anything constructed on the south side of the block until the late 19th century, until this building in the 1870s. And interestingly, the Bb outbuildings remain here, and you can see the outbuildings in the very early construction photographs for this courthouse and post office building. You can see the 2-story Bb kitchen and the covered well in the other building. The U.S. Department of the Treasury was negotiating the purchase for a site for a post office and courthouse at Little Rock as early as 1873. By 1875, the south half of Block 98 had been purchased from M.W. Benjamin for $25,729. Little Rock's post office and courthouse was designed in the Italian Renaissance Revival style by Massachusetts native James G. Hill, who served as supervising architect of the U.S. Treasury Department from 1876 to 1883. Groundwork for the post office began in November of 1876. On January 17, 1880, the Arkansas Gazette wrote about the building's progress. According to the article, the original building footprint was 69 feet by 110 feet. And I'm going to quote a big portion of that article and give you all the specs at that time. 1,984 cubic yards of dirt were excavated for the cellar. Trenches 3 by 4 feet were dug and filled with concrete, and on that foundation, the basement and area walls, or the basement walls, now stand. The contract for basement and area walls was awarded to Bivens and Robinson for $15,925 and contained 8,154 cubic feet of sandstone taken from quarries at Cabin Creek, Johnson County, Arkansas, located near present-day Lamar. The water table, ashlar, and steps contained 2,105 cubic feet of red Missouri granite at a cost of $7,600. The contract for wrought iron and cast iron work on the first floor. This was very interesting. They had 3 separate contracts, first, second, and third floor, for the iron work. First floor was awarded to Sneed & Company of Louisville, Kentucky. Iron work on the second story was awarded to S.J. Cresswell of Philadelphia. And then iron work on the third story and the roof was awarded back to Sneed & Company of Louisville. Worthington and Son of North Amherst, Ohio, had the contract for supplying stone for the building's superstructure for all the outside walls. J.F. and J.A. Hayden of St. Louis, Missouri, have the contract to supply slate for the roof, and the superstructure contains 26,832 cubic feet of sandstone, and there are 950,000 bricks in the building. That was the original structure completed in 1881. So in summary, the building had a basement made out of Cabin Creek, Arkansas sandstone. Then the base and water table were red Missouri granite, and the exterior walls were Ohio sandstone. The roof was slate with iron pressing, which it still has today. The post office and courthouse was completed in 1881, and the total cost for the construction was $224,542. The 1890 Guide to Little Rock described the use of the interior spaces of the building. The entire first floor was devoted to the post office department. In 1890, employees of the Postal Service included Postmaster R.A. Edgerton, 13 clerks, and 10 mail carriers. Receipts for the money order office at the end of March 1890 were a little over $1 million. Receipts of the Postal Department were $142,000. The second floor housed various federal offices, including the Collector of Internal Revenue, the Land Receiver, the U.S. District Attorney, the Chief Clerk of the Railway Mail Service. The third floor was home to the U.S. District Court and contained a courtroom, the one that you're in right now, the Victorian or ceremonial courtroom, judges' chambers, and jury room. The third floor also housed the office of the U.S. Marshal and the Clerk of Court. And there was no mention of the fourth floor at all. I don't think they were using it for anything at that time. So as the 19th century came to a close, Little Rock's population growth necessitated an expansion of the post office and courthouse to provide better access to federal services. The city's population had nearly tripled from the time this building was completed in 1881 to the end of the 19th century. The U.S. Treasury supervising architect, William Martin Aiken, designed a 9,000 square foot addition to the building, which extended to the north. This very central bay went more to the north. This addition enlarged the mail sorting area on the first floor and included the construction of a second courtroom on the third floor. It's right behind this back wall. So they shortened this original courtroom a little bit to make more room for the second courtroom behind you. That's the pink and gray marble courtroom, which we'll see in a little bit. The 1897 addition matched the original building extremely well and is almost indiscernible from the exterior. A 1907 publication called Little Rock and Pulaski County Illustrated provided an interesting snapshot of the Postal Service at that time. Postal receipts for the fiscal year ending June 30, 1898, so right after they had done that first edition, were a little over $61,000, while postal receipts for the year ending June 30, 1907 were $175,000, so nearly tripled, increase of more than $113,000. In 1907, the Postal Service at Little Rock was administered by the main office, this building, as well as 7 stations in Little Rock and 2 stations in Argenta, or North Little Rock. The workforce consisted of the postmaster, assistant postmaster, 36 clerks and 2 substitute clerks, 40 letter carriers, 8 substitute letter carriers, 4 rural letter carriers, and 4 special delivery messengers. So they had a total workforce of 96 people, both cities. Mail was delivered daily at Little Rock by 34 trains and was delivered in the city 5 times a day. Mail was collected in the business district 8 times a day and dispatched or sent out in 32 outgoing trains. The main post office was responsible for holding surplus postal and money order funds for many post offices throughout the state, and the main office also dispersed payment to all rural mail carriers and railway postal clerks in Arkansas. And as you can tell from that synopsis, the main post office was very busy and they soon needed more space. In 1908, supervising architect James Knox Taylor designed 2 one-story wings, which wrapped around the east and the west sides of the building and provided an additional 16,000 square feet for the post office. The one-story wings closely matched the building's existing first floor and featured a pink granite base with rusticated sandstone walls and segmental arch openings above the windows and doors. And if you look out that window, whenever you're looking around in just a minute, you can look down and you'll see the roof of that one-story addition on the east side. So this building served as a federal courthouse, post office, and customs house until 1932, December of 1932, when a new U.S. post office and courthouse was opened up at 600 West Capitol Avenue. So at that time, the old post office and courthouse was then used as office space for various federal agencies, including the Armed Forces Examining and Entrance Station. And we have somebody here, where are you, that worked there. Right here in front, right in front of her. She worked at the Armed Forces Examining and Entrance Station in the 1970s, right?
It didn't look like this.
Didn't look like this. Okay. So I found a lot of interesting stuff about the mid-20th century and this building's fate, and so I'm going to go into that. The building's future was very uncertain for a time. By spring 1966, the future of the old post office and courthouse was uncertain at best. At that time, only the first floor of the building was in use in '66. The U.S. General Services Administration, or GSA, was anxious to be rid of it. And federal urban renewal money, or slum clearance money, had been flowing into Little Rock for more than a decade, resulting in the demolition of many historic buildings in the name of progress. Pulaski County Judge Arch Campbell, who served as judge from 1950 to 1968, floated a proposal in 1966 to demolish the old post office and courthouse, this building, and the 1887 to 1890 Pulaski County Courthouse. He wanted to tear them both down, build a new courthouse annex on this spot, and connect it via underground tunnel underneath Spring Street to the 1912 to 14 Pulaski County Courthouse. That was the plan. And that may sound pretty crazy now, but it almost happened. GSA supported the idea. They were in favor of it. Pulaski County could acquire the property here, the old post office property, from the federal government at no cost, as long as they provided office space for the Armed Services Recruiting Station in their new annex building. That was all they asked. So, Judge Campbell placed 2 issues on the ballot in 1966. One issue was the proposal to build a new courthouse annex, and a separate proposal to pass a $2.3 million bond issue to pay for it, for the new construction of the courthouse annex. Well, the residents of Pulaski County passed the first issue in favor of building a new courthouse annex, but the bond issue did not pass. So if it would have passed, it would have happened. So close call, it didn't happen. In addition to Pulaski County's interest in the old post office property, there were some other people who looked at the building whenever there was rumor that it might become federal surplus property, they could get it for free. The Little Rock School Board considered it for office space, considered moving here for office space at one point in time. The city of Little Rock was interested. They wanted to raise the building for more surface parking. And then others suggested that it become an art and history museum. In 1975, the old post office and courthouse was finally designated as federal surplus property. The Federal Property and Administrative Services Act of 1949 provided for the free transfer of federal surplus property to state and local governments if the property was used as a historic monument or if it was used to fulfill educational or public health needs. So the Arkansas State Building Services worked with the Arkansas Commemorative Commission and the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program to acquire the old post office and courthouse property. After much discussion, it was determined that State Building Services, as the sole leasing agent for the state, would hold title to the property, and the Arkansas Commemorative Commission would hold an easement to ensure the preservation of historic finishes. And the Historic Preservation Program offered technical assistance, and the main thing, we helped them secure substantial funding from the National Park Service to acquire and restore the building. State Building Services officially took possession of the old post office property in August of 1976. Interestingly, the state acquired the old post office with the intent of leasing it to the University of Arkansas at Little Rock School of Law and the Department of Natural and Cultural Heritage. Yeah, us. Now the Department of Arkansas Heritage. So the Department of Heritage was supposed to occupy the first floor and the east half of the second floor, and the law school would have the rest of the building and would be able to use these courtrooms for proceedings and moot court and all this. All right, so the first restoration of the old post office and courthouse began in February 1977, and it was supervised by Charles Witzel of the Cromwell, Neeland, Trumper, Levy, and Gatchell firm in cooperation with State Building Services architect Jim Pfeiffer and the Historic Preservation Program. The Arkansas legislature appropriated $250,000 for the restoration, which was matched by $250,000 from the National Park Service. On top of that, a total of $100,000 was contributed by the University of Arkansas Foundation, the Arkansas Bar Foundation, the Arkansas Bar Association, Arkansas Commemorative Commission, and the Ben J. Altimer Foundation. The 1970s restoration consisted of roof repair, tuck pointing on the exterior, wood window repair, making all the interior spaces functional for the law school and the Department of Heritage. They removed a lot of temporary partitions and drop ceilings, the restoration of interior finishes, and the upgrading of mechanical and electrical systems. As the project moved forward, it was discovered that there would not be enough room to house both the law school and the Department of Heritage. I don't know if that was really the case, but that was the excuse and all the stuff I read. So there wasn't going to be enough room. So in July 1977, the scope of the project was changed to accommodate the law school only. Federal funds were reallocated to complete and furnish the 2 courtrooms and a law library. In January 1978, the law school began holding classes here in the old post office building, and the building was rededicated on July 15, 1978. The UNLR School of Law remained in the old post office until the summer of 1992, when it moved to its current location near MacArthur Park. But preservation advocates had become aware of this, impending move about a year ahead of time, summer of 1991, and they started working to secure a permanent future for this building. So at that time, summer 91, GSA was in the early planning phase to build a new federal courts annex building to the north of the federal courts building on Capitol Avenue. It was going to go in one of the parking lots between Arch and Gaines Streets behind the newer courts building. The U.S. Bankruptcy Court made up the majority of those people that were going to be put in that new annex building. The Bankruptcy Court judges and other federal judges in Little Rock preferred to move to this building instead of moving to a new annex. But GSA was not excited about taking a building back, which they had been happy to, get rid of earlier. So there was this massive letter writing campaign. A lot of people worked really hard on this, but former Senators Dale Bumpers and David Pryor, former Congressman John Paul Hammerschmidt, and former Chief District Judge Richard Arnold were responsible for GSA's reconsideration of the old post office building. Study plans for the second restoration of the old post office and courthouse were approved by Congress in October 1992, and construction was approved in January of 94. The Little Rock architectural firm of Witzel Evans Rasco served as the lead on a team that included Polk Stanley Saunders and Cromwell Engineers, Inc. for the 1990s restoration. John Greer of WER was the project architect. The 1994 to 97 restoration cost about $13 million. Significant interior spaces were restored to their original appearances, while other spaces were sensitively rehabilitated to meet the needs of the U.S. Bankruptcy Court. The 1881 Victorian or ceremonial courtroom, this room, was restored to its original appearance. Historic paint color analysis, if you look up, you see all the paint colors, revealed more than 25 different colors used in this room alone. The coffered ceiling and the plaster moldings were carefully restored and repainted. Before the 1977 and 78 restoration that happened, there was a drop ceiling in here. This light fixture is a replica, so it wasn't here. So they had the drop ceiling in, and it covered everything. Whoops, didn't mean to turn my back on the camera. It covered everything from the top of the windows up. You couldn't see any of the detail above the windows or anything above that. So I read some really interesting letters whenever they had been looking around in the 70s with a flashlight, and they looked up above the drop ceiling and saw that for the first time up underneath the drop ceiling. The building's current light fixtures are reproductions based on drawings in the original plans. So this one here, as well as those above and behind you, are all based on some original drawings. The chandelier here above me is supported by rings of steel with bronze powder coating. And of course it replicates the gas lights that would have originally been on it, but it's obviously electrical to meet the court's light requirements. Walnut and pine are the original woods used in this courtroom. The wainscoting is original around the room, but none of this is. None of the furniture is original in here. It's all replica. An original newel post and gate from this railing was found, and they used that to recreate what the railing looked like. And the judge's bench back here is a replica of one that was used by hanging Judge Isaac C. Parker Smith. The 1897 neoclassical courtroom behind you, behind that wall, we'll see in a minute, features Tennessee gray marble walls with Tennessee pink marble borders and mahogany wood throughout. Fluted ionic marble columns flank the judge's bench in that courtroom. And during the 1990s restoration, they did some faux marble veining to match the existing marble in a few places. A third courtroom was added to the building during the 1997 renovation. It's located on the first floor in the area historically used as the mail sorting room for the post office. The 1997 courtroom features white oak, and its walls incorporated some of the original lobby columns. And those columns that you saw whenever you came inside, those columns are plastered with the faux marble veining to make them look like marble, and they have cast iron bases and capitals. The first floor courtroom is used for visiting judges. In order to provide additional square footage for the bankruptcy court, 2 wings were constructed in 1997 to the north of the building. The 1997 wings added a total of 25,000 square feet. They are separated by about 6 feet from the back of the historic structure to provide a clear view of the Ohio sandstone and Missouri granite exterior. So there's a spot where you can stand back there, we'll see it later, where you can see the new addition. You can see it several different pieces of the building all at once. The 1997 addition was constructed with light-colored brick to match the existing sandstone exterior, and used a rake joint every 5th course to create a shadow line that matched the existing mortar joints of the original building. However, it's obviously a new structure, which was the intention. The wings each consist of 2 floors and a basement. The basement provides secure parking for judges, as it's accessible by the alley to the north of the building. The first and second floors of that new addition house a variety of offices, and we'll see them. Bankruptcy court staff began moving into the building in October of 1997, and the dedication ceremony for the newly renovated bankruptcy court was held on November 7th, 1997. The 1881 portion of the old post office and courthouse was designed by James G. Hill, supervising architect of the U.S. Treasury Department from 1876 until his resignation in 1883. Although Hill was appointed supervising architect in August of 1876, just 3 months before they broke ground on the building, he had been working in the office of the supervising architect since 1867. So he had probably been working on the plans for this building before he was promoted to that position. And Little Rock's post office and courthouse was his first major work. The Renaissance Revival style of architecture, which he chose for this building, was popular in the United States in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The style was largely modeled on the 16th century buildings of the Italian Renaissance. And features of the style on this building include, even though it has the additions, it's still symmetrical from the front, rusticated first floor, segmental arch openings over the first floor windows and doors, 3 rounded arches on the front facade above the third-story windows, and the central bay, and those are decorated, if anybody looked up before you came inside, decorated with carved classical motifs and large brackets underneath the eaves all the way around. Some other notable features, and then we'll look around or I'll answer any questions that you might have. The current building, with all the additions included, has a total of 85,660 square feet. Some of the symbols in the Victorian courtroom and this courtroom, if you look behind you, up high, you can see the U.S., there was the United States. See those symbols? And those are found throughout the building, especially on the elevator. You can see the U.S., United States, all over. And then the American flag over here, the eagle above this door, and then behind me, above the judge's bench, you have 3 different panels above each of those windows, and going from right to left for you, you have the fasces, or the symbol of judicial authority. In the center, you have the scales of justice, which symbolize fairness and balance. And then over here on the left side, you have the flames or torches, the crossed flames or torches, and that's a symbol of truth. The elevator, which most of you have already seen whenever you came up here, is a cast iron traction elevator that dates to about 1896. The ironwork was manufactured by Jones and Laughlin Iron and Steel Company of Pittsburgh, and it was operated by hand lever, and it was used up until 1992, but it's no longer operational due to modern safety standards. But you can look inside. Whenever we go down the first floor, you can open it up and get in it. And that elevator was one of the first elevators in Little Rock. It wasn't the first, but it's one of the first in Little Rock, and it may be one of the oldest in the state left right now. From the 4th floor, whenever we go upstairs, you can look on top of that elevator and you can see all the mechanical apparatus that was used to operate it is there visible on top of it, so you can see that. Original bronze and brass window and door hardware and ventilation grills throughout the building. Original marble mantles in these rooms whenever we go around the corner. And what was the 3rd floor judges' chambers were in these rooms over here, to my left, your right. And they were coal-burning fireplaces. The columns in the 1st floor lobby, I told you, are plastered with faux marbling. There's some postal windows from the post office that are left on the west side of the 1st floor. I can show you those too. There's a safe in the finance office, which is on the east side of the 1st floor. That's a 1910 safe. And then the sculpture to the west of the building, is anybody familiar with that sculpture? Because right now you're not going to go out and look at it in the rain, but I'll tell you about it. GSA commissioned the sculpture during the 1990s renovation of the building, and it was created by Washington, D.C. artist Jim Sanborn, and it comments upon the evolution of bankruptcy laws, which now allow individuals and corporations to survive financial collapse, which historically that was not the case. The sculpture consists of 2 6-foot blocks of granite. One of those is red and one is black, and that represents equally your debts and assets. And those blocks are connected by a piece of text inscribed bronze, like a bronze screen, so you can see through it. The letters are cut out, and what's inscribed on it are ancient laws that have to do with bankruptcy. About 30 people work in the building today, so it's all U.S. Bankruptcy Court and staff. And there's about 30 people. Does anybody have any questions right now? And then we'll start looking around. Okay, our next tour is Friday, April 3rd at the Lynch Apartments 523 Orange Street in North Little Rock. Thanks for coming, y'all.